There is a relatively new feature on pretty much all web browsers these days that you might want to enable if it's not already. It goes by a few names. Encrypted DNS is one, secure DNS, or also private DNS. DNS stands for Domain Name Service, and basically it's just the conversion that your web browser makes when you type in a URL, the name of a website. Your browser has to look up the actual IP address that name corresponds to, and it does so using a domain name server. So it basically contacts the server, hey, what's the IP address for this website, and then the server will send it back, and then the browser connects directly to that server. But this request back and forth is usually not encrypted, which has a couple drawbacks. One, someone could listen in and see which websites you're trying to access simply by looking at what DNS traffic is going through, even if the actual connection to the website is encrypted. And also, if there's someone who's able to perform a man-in-the-middle attack, they could basically intercept the DNS request and send you back a fake request, which will redirect you to maybe a scam website or something. So encrypted DNS was created, so basically you know that you're talking to the correct DNS server and the response you're getting back is real, and also it means that no one can spy in on that DNS request. Now there are two different forms of encrypted DNS. One is called DNS over HTTPS, and one is called DNS over TLS. You really don't have to know the difference. For all intents and purposes, for most people, they're going to be exactly the same. So just recognize that they might be called different things, but they effectively do the same thing. So yes, I am going to show you how to enable encrypted DNS. It's pretty simple on most web browsers. On mobile, it's a little bit different, but I'm going to show you all that, and I'll put the timestamps in the description if you want to skip right to your part. One quick thing as a heads up though, if you're going to be using this on a computer or a browser that's on a school or work network that uses some kind of DNS filtering for web traffic, this could cause unexpected results. Because if they do DNS filtering, then they might see this encrypted DNS as an attempt to get around that, and they might just block your connection altogether. So if you enable this on a work network and you can't connect to the internet anymore, you might just not be able to use this. Or alternatively, it could actually allow you to bypass their filters depending on how it's set up. So just kind of monitor. If anything weird happens to your internet and you don't like it, just disable it again. Before we get started, as a quick reminder, if you guys didn't know, if you want to get my videos early, you can actually become a member of my channel here on YouTube. You get some other perks such as custom emojis that you can use in the comments, a cool badge next to your name, and some other stuff that you can see here. And like I said, early videos, usually about a day early. As soon as I finish uploading the video and putting it on YouTube, I send out the unlisted link to members so you can view or comment on it first if you want. If you're on desktop or Android, you can just click that join button. If you're on iOS, you're gonna have to go over to a desktop to join because Apple takes a really huge cut. YouTube doesn't enable joining on iOS because of that. So if you want to support the channel, you can do that. But in any case, let's continue. So what I'll do is I'll first go over how to enable it on individual web browsers on desktop. Then I'll talk about how to enable it on your phone or mobile devices that applies to the entire phone. And then we'll talk about how to enable it on desktop for the entire computer. Now to make sure it works before and after, you can actually use Cloudflare's DNS checker to see if it's already enabled. So if you go to the link in the description, I'll put it right here. It will basically tell you which of the things are enabled, and you can see all the way on the left, encrypted DNS is not by default, probably. Alternatively, you can just go to 1.1.1.1/help. That's also run by Cloudflare. It's a little bit different interface, but it breaks it down even by HTTPS or TLS, so you can look at there too. And that one might be a little bit easier to remember. All right, so first, let's go over how to enable encrypted DNS on all the different major web browsers, which pretty much all support it. So first, let's do Chromium-based browsers. This is gonna be like Microsoft Edge, Brave browser, Google Chrome, of course, and Chromium. They're all based on the same thing. For Google Chrome, you go to Settings, and then Privacy and Security, and then under Security, and then Secure DNS. You check it to enable it, and then select the different provider. I would just recommend Cloudflare 1.1.1. That's the one I use, and they kind of pioneer a lot of this encrypted DNS stuff, so they're a decent one to use. In other Chromium-based browsers, it might be slightly different location for the setting, but the setting will be there. For example, in Edge, it's in Settings, and then Privacy, Search and Services, and then under Security. So if you can't find it in another Chromium browser, just look for like a settings area called Security or something, and then look for Secure DNS or Encrypted DNS. Next, for Firefox, it's a pretty similar story. You go to Options, and then stay in the General tab, and then scroll down to the bottom where it says Network Settings. And then at the bottom of that menu that pops up, you check the thing that says Enable DNS over HTTPS. And then again, you can select Cloudflare or whatever one you want. There's other services out there now too. So then after you enable it in the browser, you can go back to the test website and it should say that encrypted DNS is enabled. All right, so as you saw, really easy to enable it on individual browsers on desktop. Now let's go over how to enable it across your entire phone. On Android, the feature is actually called private DNS, and this should be available in pretty much most of the more recent major versions of Android. You should have it. Depending on your phone's manufacturer, the location of the setting might be slightly different, but generally you can just go into settings and then look for where it says network settings, or it might be called something different. For example, on stock Android, it's called network and internet. On Samsung, it's called connections, something like that. Next, on stock Android, you go to what is called advanced settings. And for Samsung, it's called more connection settings. Again, look for something that expands more settings. And then in there, you can actually look for where it says private DNS. And when you tap it, you'll probably see 3 options: off, automatic, and then a section to enter your own custom one. For some reason, automatic didn't work for me, so you're probably gonna have to enter a custom host name. And one thing to keep in mind is on Android, for some reason, it requires you to enter an actual host name, so URL, not like an IP address such as Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1. You would have to use the actual host name of that, which is 1.1.1.1 spelled out .cloudflare-dns.com. I know, not exactly easy to type out, but that's what it is. I think the reason is because the host name supports IPv6, whereas if you just put 1.1.1, that's IPv4, and mobile networks require IPv6. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, just look up the host name version of whatever DNS server you want to use. And then you can go on the test site and check if it's enabled or not. And again, you can use either one. All right, next, let's talk about enabling it on iOS and iPadOS. Now, these do support encrypted DNS natively on the backend. However, for some reason, Apple has not implemented a simple GUI way to add this setting like they have on Android that we saw. Instead, what you have to do is create a configuration network profile that you load onto your iOS or iPad device, and then that configures the DNS. It's not quite as complicated as it sounds, but it is obviously more involved, but still, I'll walk you through it. And by the way, this might actually change with iOS 15 or future updates. So if you're watching this video years down the line, check the description. I might put if they added this feature more easily, but if you're watching it today, then you'll have to go through this. Fortunately, there are some people on the internet who created pre-made configuration files. One is a programmer named Paul Miller. On his GitHub page, he made a bunch of pre-made ones for different DNS providers, including Cloudflare and even specific ones for HTTPS or TLS. And it is open source, so you can go in there and look exactly what the code is, make sure there's nothing weird in there, and other people have presumably looked at it too. So the first thing to do is go to this page, and I'll put the link in the description, and make sure you access it from the actual device that you're going to be installing this profile onto. So if you're on your phone, then you have to go on your phone to this site. So just pick one of the files, whichever applies to you the most. You can just do the Cloudflare HTTPS one. That one's fine. Next, on this page that has the code on the mobile version at least, you tap the 3 dots and then tap View Raw, which will link directly to the actual file. It'll then ask you if you want to download the configuration profile. You hit Allow, but realize this won't actually install it yet, it just downloads it. So next what you need to do is go into the Settings app, and then near the top you'll see this new menu pop up that says Profile Downloaded, so click into that. Here you'll be able to see some more details about the profile you downloaded, including what settings were changed, and you can go in and see that it changes some DNS settings. And that includes the URL for the DNS host. But anyway, here you just click Install, and then it'll give you a warning, and then you click Install again, and now it should be set. So now you'll be able to see that this was installed by going to General, and then under Profile, and you can see all the profiles installed here. And this is also where, if you ever wanted to, you could uninstall. You just remove the profile from in here if you want. So now, again, you can go back into Cloudflare's DNS checker site, either one, and see if it worked. And if I go to the 1.1.1/help site, I can specifically see that it did enable DNS over HTTPS, which is the profile I downloaded. Now, I should point out that there are apps out there that will allow you to connect to encrypted DNS, but it does it a little bit differently. Instead of doing it natively through the operating system like we just did, the apps such as Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1 app will basically create a VPN profile. So it's like a local VPN where it kind of redirects all the traffic on the phone through the app and then goes out. But even though that might be easier to do initially, I'd rather not just have a VPN profile active all the time that might interfere with other VPN software I'm using and stuff like that. So I'd rather just do it natively through the operating system, which is what we did. All right, so now let's talk about enabling encrypted DNS on the entire computer on a desktop. So for example, Windows and Mac. macOS does support encrypted DNS, and is basically actually a very similar process to what we just did on the iOS. You have to, again, download a mobile profile on macOS, and actually, you download the exact same profile. So if you downloaded Cloudflare HTTPS for iOS, you can download the exact same profile and install it on your Mac. So again, what you can do is go onto that GitHub page again, click on the one you want, but then this time what you have to do is control click on where it says raw, and then click download linked file as, and then choose to put it wherever. And you will have to rename it to take off the .text file. For some reason, when you download it, the Mac will add that text file extension, which you have to remove. But then wherever the file goes, you just double click it, and then it will bring up the profile menu, and then you can click continue and then install from there. And then just like on iOS, it should work right away. All right, now for Windows though, unfortunately, Windows does not support encrypted DNS yet for the entire operating system. They have implemented the feature in insider or beta versions of Windows basically, but that's only people who have signed up to receive those beta versions. Hopefully this feature will be implemented in the next major feature update, which will be probably near the end of 2021. So if you are watching from the future, then you can see here, this might be where the setting will be accessible, just right in the network settings, and then you go to network adapter properties. It might allow you to enter an encrypted DNS setting right there. But again, otherwise you can still just enable it on the browser level and it'll still work for that. All right, so that's how to set up encrypted DNS on basically all your devices, but you may have caught one thing, which is no matter how you set it up, on the test checker page, you'll probably see that on the all the way to the right, it says ESNI, something called ESNI is not enabled. It has a red check. That's actually more of an upcoming feature, not really something you have to worry about right now, but let me explain it anyway if you're interested. Basically, encrypted DNS is great, but it's not perfect. You see, when you make a requested DNS server, that will be encrypted so the ISP or whoever can't actually snoop in on what DNS requests you're making. But the thing is, when you go to actually access that website directly, there are requests to the site that initiate the handshake that are done in the clear. So even though they can't see the DNS requests you're making, they can still see which websites exactly you're accessing. And this part of the handshake before it's actually all encrypted is called server name identification, or SNI. So enter two new technologies known as ESNI and ECH. First is ESNI, or encrypted SNI. Basically, no browsers actually support this at the moment. Strangely, Firefox previously did support ESNI, but they removed the feature to replace it with ECH, which I'll talk about next. However, you can actually get the Firefox Extended Support Release, or ESR, if you want to get ESNI. So you just have to download that special version of Firefox, and then also actually enable some experimental tags in the About Config menu, and then you'll be able to use ESNI. And you can see when I run the extended support version of Firefox and enable those, I can get all 4 check marks enabled. But again, no other browsers that I'm aware of support ESNI, so don't worry about that check marks being green because it's already kind of experimental feature. It's not really a finalized thing yet. There is the other one though, ECH, which stands for Encrypted Client Hello, and this is actually an improvement on ESNI. So ESNI will probably never be a thing, and most web browsers, once this is all finalized, will probably use ECH. Now, the current release of Firefox does support ECH, and they again replaced ESNI with this. But in my opinion, this was very dumb because literally no sites that I'm aware of support ECH at all. I mean, even the Cloudflare DNS checker that checks for ESNI doesn't even check for ECH. So literally the people who are pioneering the ECH protocol don't check for it. So literally nothing uses it. So, okay, yeah, it's great that Firefox added this feature for the future, but why did they remove ESNI that can actually be used and is actually used by several websites? Anyway, you might be wondering how this ESNI and ECH work. I mean, if you're talking to your ISP and you want to access a website, your ISP has to make that connection. So how can they possibly not know what website you're asking for if they're the ones that connect you to that website? And the answer is pretty interesting. So many websites are behind what is called a content delivery network, or CDN. Cloudflare is a major example of this. Another one is Imperva Encapsula. I think they're another company. Basically, they're a service where you kind of put your website behind their network, almost like a firewall. So instead of people, when they go to your URL, instead of them accessing your server directly, they access a cache version that Cloudflare hosts. And this has a few benefits. First of all, Cloudflare has servers all over the world, so when someone, no matter where they are, tries to access your site, they can access the fastest version, which is a very close version of Cloudflare's server instead of yours, which might be across the world. Also, this adds a barrier for if hackers want to try and DDoS your website or something like that, then they're going to be DDoSing the whole Cloudflare network, which is very much set up to block DDoS attacks and hacks and stuff like that. It's called a web application firewall. But the important point of all this is because all of these sites are hosted on Cloudflare or behind Cloudflare, they all kind of have either a same or very similar group of IP addresses. So basically, because you encrypt your initial DNS request with Cloudflare or whatever, then your ISP will not be able to snoop in and see what DNS requests you're making. So to the ISP, they can only see that you're accessing some website on Cloudflare's network, which could be one of millions, but they can't see exactly which website you're accessing. The one thing to remember though is I believe this is probably only going to work for websites that are behind some kind of content delivery network. If you're accessing a website where it has its own server, then obviously there's probably no way to get around the ISP seeing where you're connecting to, but still, for many websites, it'll still be a help. So yeah, that might have been more knowledge than you're bargaining for, but at least now you know how to enable this security feature. And again, if things start acting weird, you lose your connection or whatever, you can always just disable it by undoing these settings we changed. So like I mentioned before, if you guys want to become a channel member, you can get my videos early, get emojis and a cool badge. You just click the join button, or if you're on iOS, you can just do it on desktop. Or I, of course, always just appreciate if you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys want to keep watching, the next video I'd recommend is about a new telephone scam that's going around that is very interesting, and you might want to watch it because it's one of those scams where you can do nothing wrong and still get scammed. So definitely check it out right there. You can just click on it. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.